Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net with another Tales from IT. And this is a warning for people who, I'm not saying I'm going to call you extreme cheapskates, but this is a warning for people who erroneously assume that they're saving money or saving time because they've always got to beat that dollar. I'm going to be honest with you, when you're buying a replacement computer, especially if you're a person who needs a replacement computer for something important like managing your business or running an important program that's central to your business, this is not something you want to try to save money on. Obviously, there's such a thing as sales, but I'm going to give you a horror story right now, and you can make your decision if that extra $5 you saved at that moment were worth it. There is such a thing in the market that unfortunately is being referred to as certified pre-owned. That's fine for when it comes to things like collectibles. That's even fine for when it comes to things like cartridges or CDs, as long as they're not damaged. But the term certified pre-owned when you're dealing with computers is completely and utterly useless. Unless you're intending to run legacy software in a closed environment, there is literally no reason whatsoever why you would want to buy an older computer, especially if your intention is to run modern software that works on modern computers. Now, I understand the love of being told the computer's refurbished, it's got all new parts, it's never been used, it's brand new, and hell, you'll save $5 on it. But the problem with that is, and while you will absolutely save those $5, and while it's very possible you may end up getting new components, there's still old components. Old components that theoretically cost just as much, if not slightly less, and again, we're talking about a matter of $5, than new components that were made last week, last month, and could be as much as 50 to 100 times faster than the components you just saved $5 on. Now, you want to talk about deals? Buying new computers is probably the better deal right now. And allow me to explain this to you with a story about literally something that I had to deal with almost a decade ago. I had a customer who had a major business, copy shop, and he was in need of an extra laptop to basically do major graphic work on. I won't say he was a cheapskate, but he did believe in a deal. Maybe a little bit too much so. So he comes to me and says, "Hi, I need a new laptop for work. I'm going to be doing Photoshop on it," which is, again, a modern version of Photoshop. I saw this computer that was on sale. It's marked certified pre-furbished, which they said is just as good as new. And it's about $5 or $10 less than some of the other computers that they're selling. Would you tell me if this is any good? So I took one look at it, and I saw that the computer was a Core 2 Duo, which I knew Intel didn't even make and hadn't made. I knew it predated the i5s, the i7s, the i3s, which, by the way, are now in like their 14th generation. So you can just do the math as to if this thing was using something that predated a Core i5 or i3, i7, how old this thing could be. It was basically like one step up from like a 64-bit Pentium or something. That's how old. They were using Core 2 Duos in 2006. And this was a decade later. So I told him, "It's old." He's like, "Yeah, I know it's old. It should work, right?" I said, No, you don't understand. Those circuits are old. Those chips are old. I even told him they're 10 years old, if I'm correct. That's when they were made. That computer will probably fire up, I told him, when you get it. But it's probably not going to last more than a year or two before it burns out because of how old it is. And he dropped the subject. And I can tell you right now, he didn't take my advice, because about a week later, he sent me a follow-up message and said, hey, I bought that computer and it takes me like 5 minutes to start up. And it takes me like 6 or 7 minutes once it's started up to launch Photoshop. Anything you can do to make it quicker? And I told him, nope. Once I took one look at it, it was the computer I told him not to buy. He had bought it, he ignored me. And I'm looking at what is possible with this laptop at this point. I'm like, it uses old RAM. It had been maxed out. He had indeed bought a certified refurbished. All they did was basically take those old motherboards, those old chips, and just max out what the RAM could be. That's what they called. And again, it probably was new old stock, but it wasn't adequate 10 years later. So they put like Windows 7 or Windows 10 on, I can't remember, but they put a new operating system on it. They loaded all the drivers. It was running as fast as it possibly could be with that hardware. And because it was a laptop and because it was old stock, there wasn't too much that you could do with it to make it any faster than it already had been. So once I took one look at it, I said, oh, I can't upgrade this. I can't upgrade this. This is already maxed out. And I looked at them and I said, with like 1 or 2 exceptions, this computer is literally as fast as it possibly could be because of how old it is. It's just capped by the fact of how old it is and how old those systems are. Oh, come on, there's got to be something you could do, is what he said. And I had a theory that the thing probably still had like a 2.5-inch SATA slot in the case. I said, well, my guess is he probably stuck like an M.2. I'm sorry, like a 5200, like what do you call it? 2.5-inch, mechanical hard drive in here. Maybe if you want, you could go out and I could buy like the fastest SSD right now and stick it in there. You wouldn't have as much storage capacity, but it might be a little bit faster and it would certainly fit that slot. And at the time, SSDs were pretty blistering fast. Samsung made a bunch of them. They were not cheap. And they did not have the storage capacities. I think I was willing to talk him into a 500 gig Samsung SSD, and a 2.5-inch SATA. It cost him $250 for that drive at that time, for only 500 gigs. But that was a lot of capacity and a hell of a lot of speed for a computer that was 10 years old. So he forked over the money for the replacement drive. And he said, go buy the drive, swap it out. I said, it's going to take me all day. He's like, no problem. I'll pay you for your time. So I go out, I get him a replacement. I tried 2 attempts. First thing I try to do is I try to do a disk image, which I do. I did like an external disk image for him. But it turned out that Samsung at the time had come up with like this drive conversion program, basically, where you would just simply plug the drive into an adapter, which I did have. You could plug the drive in externally, like a USB adapter or something. And if you ran like the Samsung program, it would take all the data and all the files that were on that image and just move them from the primary drive to to their Samsung drive. And then you could just simply swap the drives out. And that's the route that ended up working the best. Because, again, I was going from like a 750 gig drive to a 500 gig drive. And even though I hadn't maxed out, I think he was only using like 20, 30 gigs of data in that system. He still was able to get it. I still was able to do it. It still took all day because it still only had USB 2 ports. It still was relying on a mechanical hard drive. So that was basically bottlenecking it. 6 hours later, I swap out the drive, I start Windows, Windows pops up in a minute. I try running Photoshop, that pops up in about 2 minutes. So by my math, I believe the computer had probably been made at least by a factor of, faster by a factor of between 6 and 10. Counting. And that was good enough for him. So I walked out of there with a couple of $100 extra in my pocket. He had his piece of junk that was now decent enough to run at a workable pace. And he had paid, between the computer and between my fees just to make it workable, probably twice to an extra, at least an extra third to at least twice what he would have paid had he just simply bought a brand new computer. Let that be a lesson to you guys looking for deals. Was that a deal that was really worthwhile? I'll let you guys make that decision. Until next time, my name is Maniac with GamingSense.net. Take care. Over and out.